Am I about to do a wedding or a funeral? Whenever my kids were little, anytime I'd put on a suit, which in my old life was a regular kind of occurrence, they would be able to just kind of peek in and figure out if I was doing a wedding or a funeral. It was all based on one thing, a pen. You see, whenever you go do a wedding, you have to sign the marriage license. And so I would always make sure there was a pen tucked in my pocket. And yet whenever I was doing a funeral, there would be no pen. Today, I kind of have a funeral mindset to some extent. It's kind of a sad way to begin the year, but I think it's a mindset that we all need to have. This reality that life itself is a gift that God has given to us. And yet because he gives it to us every single day, if we're not very careful, we can begin to take it for granted. But we shouldn't. It's a reminder that Moses gives us in Psalm 90, verse 12. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. As Moses looks at the massive nature of God, from you've been our dwelling place from generation to generation, he says, he talks about how in God's eyes 1,000 years are like a day, and a day are like 1,000 years. His response to the enormity and the sovereignty of God is this prayer: teach us to number our days. Let us recognize the finite nature that we have and then receive from God the gift of every single day, or in this case, every single year, and recognize we don't deserve it, we haven't been promised it, and yet for whatever reason, God has placed it in our hands, and now let's take it and use it to the absolute best of our ability. Why do we number things? We number things to remember that they're not infinite, that there is a finite number, and so we need to number our years and our days to be reminded that we're only going to have a few. We number things in order to put them in proper order, to recognize what is it that I'm supposed to do at this very moment. What is this season? What is this day? How is today different than the same day a year ago or a decade ago? What is it that would be right for you to do 10 years ago that wouldn't be right for you to do today? Well, what is it that you need to milk out of this day that you may not get another chance? You see, when you and I just live day to day without much thought, we can begin to take for granted the very gifts that God has given to us. And yet, whenever we are reminded that any of us are just 72 hours away from actually having a guy like me stand behind your casket and give a testimony of what your life was all about. Whenever we begin to see the finite nature of our days, and we count them and we number them, we grow an appreciation of them, and it empowers us to use them to the absolute best of our ability. God, in his graciousness and his kindness, has given you and I this year. He has given us this day. Let's use it for all it's worth to make much of him.